Let him call me unstable. He forgot who taught him to hold the line. The words left my mouth before I knew I'd said them. The phone was still warm against my cheek. Warren's voice a low metronome, counting out the end of my reign. Petition to declare me incompetent. Filed by my son. My own blood, walking into court with a straight face and a pocket full of affidavits about my grief. Summer's name turned into an exhibit and a spear. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. I set the glass down and listened to the ice settle. In my office, the lights throw long rectangles across the wood, like cell bars. You understand what this means, Warren had said. I do. You don't build something like Roland Systems and survive 5 recessions without understanding the lay of the field when the wind changes. Power doesn't scream when it shifts. It moves quietly like money at midnight. There's a rule I taught Patrick when he was 10 and wanted to swing at the catcher for talking trash. The first man to throw a punch is the first man to lose a room. I won't swing. I will breathe. I will count. And I will choose where the room is. The petition arrives by courier. Ink, paper, and insult in legalese. Emotional instability. The phrase sits there, cold as a coin. They quote the year after Summer died. The quiet days when I wanted a house like a man searching for a misplaced heartbeat. I won't defend sorrow in a paragraph. Love shouldn't need footnotes. I slide the documents back into the envelope and open the bottom drawer. The old gold pen lies there, heavy with other signatures. My father used it to buy us a factory no one else wanted. I used it to sign the covenant that put our people on health plans that could outlast a pink slip. A pen remembers a hand. It doesn't care about gossip. I place it in my inside pocket, not for decor, but to remind myself that decisions are made, not begged for. Warren wants a counterpunch by morning. I want something cleaner. The city hums beyond the glass, a soft mechanical tide. Under it, older currents. There's a room beneath the stock exchange where the years keep their own minutes. Steel and paper stacked like sedimentary rock. If truth still breathes anywhere, it breathes in places that were never meant for cameras. I make a note. Not yet, but soon. My phone buzzes again. Patrick. Dinner tonight? 7 family. The word lands with a dull, familiar weight. He wants to see if I'll crack, if the fork will shake in my hand. I text back. Wouldn't miss it. Then I study my reflection. 68, lying like a good map. The trick, at my age, isn't that you move slower. It's that you move last. I walk the perimeter of the office, cataloging the quiet. The clock's second hand clicks like a trader's pen. Somewhere in the ducts, a distant thrum answers, a metallic heartbeat that makes me think of the underbelly of the exchange. The breath of old machines. Memory is a ledger. Entries, exits, balances due. Patrick thinks he can zero me out with a petition. Let him try. I say to the room, and the room, polite as ever, says nothing back. I button my jacket and switch off the lamp. The hallway smells like varnish and caution. The elevator doors slide open, reflecting me in a thin strip of chrome, a man other people think is finished. The doors begin to close on that image. Before they seal, my phone lights again. Warren, one more detail, his voice tight, who signed as witnesses for Patrick. 2 names, and both of them bought men I've fed for 20 years. The doors shut, the cab drops, and as the numbers count down toward the lobby, I decide exactly where the room will be and what I'll put on the table when I get there. Because if my son plans to bury me under paper, I'm going to make him dig in front of everyone. The elevator stops on 12. The doors open, and Patrick steps in. Patrick steps in like he owns the elevator. He doesn't. I do. He presses the lobby button, even though it's already lit. Small dominance play. Old as chess. 7 still good? He asks, eyes bright, mouth easy. The doors slice us off from the floor, and the cab hums. I keep my hands folded over the gold pen in my pocket, so I don't tap a rhythm that betrays thought. 7, I say, family. He watches me the way a broker watches a chart at 3:59 p.m. For a tremor. You look tired, Dad. I sleep fine. I let a beat pass. You, big week, he says, and the corner of his mouth lifts rehearsal slipping through the mask. The doors open. We exit as two men with nothing to argue about. We pick the old place on Fifth where some are like the roast chicken, and the piano never plays above a murmur. The host knows my name. Patrick lets him say it twice. We take the corner banquette. Linen smooth as a non-disclosure agreement. The ceiling vent whispers. Glass on glass. Sound of forks like distant taps on a Bloomberg terminal. He starts with small talk. Market chatter, board chatter. The fake friendly weather of corporate life. I let him steer, let him feel the wheel catch. My son loves a clean narrative. The loyal heir assuming control to save the company from his father's grief. If he can turn my love for his mother into a clause about capacity, he'll do it with a smile. How's the house? He asks, buttering bread he won't eat. You still keep Mom's study the same? She liked the light in there. I say. I leave the blinds up. He nods like he's listening. I know he's measuring. It's good to honor her, he says, but also, to move forward. I never knew you to confuse forward with fast. I say. For a second his eyes flick, left, then back. Text on the phone? Reflection of a plan? He grins to cover it. I worry about you. You worry about margins. I say gently. You leave the rest to me. The chicken arrives, lemon steam curling like a memory. I tell him a story he hasn't heard in years. Summer hand-stitched my cuffs before meeting the day the dot-com bubble burst. She said, hold the line, Devin. Not for pride. For the people on the line with you. I cut, chew, swallow. He takes a sip of water, buying time. Good words, he says, for a different market. He slices too hard. The knife clicks porcelain. The sound runs up the table like current. I tilt my head, and in the candle's low light, I see it. The tension he thinks he hid. The quartz-bright strain of a man who already signed something ugly and needs to look frail in public. Dad, he says softly, there's a proposal I want you to consider. A sabbatical. Optics, I say. We used to call that truth. Truth, he repeats, and smiles like a closing bell. Then you won't mind signing a short letter, just to reassure the street. He slides a folded sheet from his jacket and leaves it by my fork as if it were a mint. I don't look at it. I look at him. Behind his eyes lives the meeting he thinks he's already won, the room he thinks will applaud when he speaks my decline into existence. I lift my glass. To family, I say. He hesitates, then touches his rim to mine. The tap is hollow. We walk out under the orange wash of the awning. The night tastes like rain and metal. He hugs me too formally, then turns left. Phone already up, mouth already moving. I stand a moment, hand in my pocket on the way to the pen, and count to 10. Then I go home. The house opens to me with the soft chirp of the alarm. I don't turn on the big lights. The hallway keeps its secrets. Summer study waits at the end. The blinds still up, the city glinting in the glass. I move the canvas she loved, blue horizon, thin gold line, aside on its rail. The safe behind it is older than Patrick. The numbers turn under my fingers like beads in a prayer. It opens on the first try. On top rests an envelope. Cream gone slightly yellow. Her handwriting crawls back across time, as if she'd written it an hour ago. Devin. The first line says, and then, in the next breath that steals mine, if Patrick ever forgets the way to love, remind him gently. But if he turns at forgetfulness and a hunger, don't let him feed on you. Her words hit harder than the petition. Summer's script, clean, deliberate, alive on the page though she's been gone 6 years. I sit in the study's dim hush, the city smeared across the glass, and feel her hand on my shoulder the way it rested after the funerals, after quarterly bloodlettings, after every war fought in polished boardrooms. I read on. She had feared this day. Our son wants to be seen. If he can't find recognition in your eyes, he will look for it in the eyes of strangers, and they will not love him as we do. I close my own eyes, hear the piano at that restaurant, hear Patrick's knife strike china. Hunger disguised as progress. I fold the letter and lay it back with the others, dozens of them, each one a map. My safe is more than steel. It is a reliquary of warnings. I take out 3 more envelopes, skim through lines I know. Her caution that grief would make me soft clay in other hands. Her faith that integrity would still be the last currency. I breathe them in, then slide them back, one by one. The gold pen gleams in the lamplight as I lock the door. Downstairs, Warren's message waits. He wants to meet before dawn. I call him. His voice is brisk, tired. Devin, it's not just Patrick. He's promised Kirk and Sage double returns if they support him. Mass layoffs, restructuring. They smell blood. Kirk and Sage, names carved into the company's stone for decades. Men who never saw a payroll they couldn't cut. They were waiting for this. What do you want me to do? Warren asks. Nothing, I tell him. Not yet. Because this isn't courtroom chess anymore. This is something older, deeper. If Patrick bought men with promises, there will be ink, and ink leaves shadows in ledgers. I barely sleep. The night vibrates with old ducks, with the imagined hum of the underground archive. When the sky pales, I dress in black and gray, the colors of boardrooms and funerals. The pen in my pocket feels heavier than usual, like it knows it's being summoned. By noon, I'm at the exchange. Security scans my badge, waves me through. The marble floor amplifies every step like a verdict. I pass traders who don't look up, young men who think history is just a chart on a screen. They don't know that beneath their shoes runs a vein of silence, a labyrinth of paper and steel. The stairwell down is narrow, painted once in green but now mostly rust. The air cools with each step, metallic and damp, as if the building itself is exhaling. My shoes echo. Memory stirs. I first came here with my father, decades ago, to see where the contract slept. He said, "This is where truth takes the elevator down and waits for men brave enough to fetch it back up." I reach the door, iron scarred, bolted. A guard glances at my badge, nods, and lets me pass. The hinges groan. Inside, the archive breathes its old breath. Dust, ink, paper fat with years. Rows upon rows of ledgers, boxes stacked like tombstones. Fluorescent bulbs hum, casting everything in a sickly yellow. The sound reminds me of the vent above our dinner table last night, a whisper from the underbelly of the empire. I walk the aisles, fingertips grazing spines, until I find the section. Roland Systems. 30 years compressed into volumes thick as Bibles. My hand hesitates before I pull one free. The weight makes my wrist ache. I open it. At first, it's all familiar. Mergers, acquisitions, dry language that smells of ink and sweat. But then discrepancies. Signatures that look too neat. Dates shifted by a day, 2 days. Contract aligning too perfectly with Patrick's rise. And there it is. A deal marked confidential. Payments routed through shell firms. Signatures from Kirk and Sage. The handwriting is his, my son's, mimicking mine, but thinner, greedier. My throat goes dry. Summer's voice again. Don't let him feed on you. I snap photos, page after page. Evidence undeniable. The hum of the lamps grows louder, or maybe it's my blood. A shadow stretches across the floor. The guard? No. Shoes too fine. The smell of cologne too sharp. I look up, and Patrick stands at the end of the aisle, hands in pockets, smile small and sharp. Well, he says, voice echoing off the ledgers, Dad still remembers where the bones are buried. Well, Patrick repeats, stepping closer, the echo of his shoes bouncing against the iron ribs of the archive. You never did like to share your toys. I close the ledger with deliberate care. Dust billows up, drifting between us like smoke after gunfire. He keeps smiling, but the corners of his eyes twitch. The kind of twitch you see on a man who's already over-leveraged his hand. You shouldn't be here. I say, neither should you. His tone is light, but his gaze cuts. These rooms belong to the exchange, to the board, to men who understand the new order. He circles a box stack, brushing his fingers across the lids. But here you are, 68 years old, chasing shadows through paper. Shadows tell the truth, I answer. Screens tell whatever you pay them to. He tilts his head, pretending to admire my resilience. You know, the petition will hold. Warren won't save you. And even if he tried, by the time this goes public, you'll be a headline. Grieving founder loses grip. Investors love that story. It makes them feel merciful while they gut what you built. I let the silence stand. Then I reach into my pocket, pull out the phone, and hold the camera steady on the ledger. Click. Flash. Another click. His smile flickers. You think pictures matter? He asks. Counsel won't even look at them. They will, I say, when I put them next to the voices of the men you bought. His jaw shifts. Just a fraction, but I see it. The tells are still his weakness. He takes a step closer, lowering his voice. You're making this ugly. I was giving you an exit. Graceful. We could have told the world you retired, that you chose peace. Instead, you're going to drag Mom's ghost into this. Drag my name. Drag. Your name, I cut in, was never for sale. Until you signed it. The smile dies. For the first time in months, I see him unarmored, the boy who once held Summer's hand at funerals, asking me why men in suits cried. That boy is gone, buried under paper trails and backroom promises. Get out, he says. It's not a request. I don't move. I place the ledger gently back into its slot, aligning it perfectly with the others. Ritual matters. Then I turn to him. You wanted me to break here. You wanted me to look lost. But you forget, Patrick. I taught you where to look. You never learned how to see. We stand in the hum, the ducks above sighing with metallic breath. For a moment I think he'll strike me. His fist tightens and loosens. He exhales, shakes his head, and turns away. At the door he pauses. Enjoy your ghosts, Dad. When the council meets, they won't care about ink. He leaves. The iron groans shut behind him. I'm alone again, but the air feels charged, dangerous, like a storm about to split the ground. I gather what I can, photos, notes, a handful of dates written in Summer's looping script that I carried from her letters. I know what I have, but I need more. A witness who remembers the sound of Patrick's promises, not just the shape of his lies. The elevator ride up feels like surfacing from a dive. Light hits my face too bright, too fast. The world above doesn't know the bones below. Evening bleeds into the skyline as I drive across the river to a brownstone that hasn't changed since Reagan. Rosemary, oldest shareholder, survivor of more coups than most men can spell. She has no love for me, but she respects history. She opens the door herself, cane in one hand, sharp eyes in the other. Devin Rowland, she says, voice cracked but steady. Come to confess or conspire? I place the ledger copy on her mahogany table alongside the photos. Her fingers brush them, slow, deliberate. You're saying this is Patrick? I'm saying it's not me. The room holds its breath. A clock ticks. She studies my face as if the truth is written deeper than ink. Finally, she sits back, lips pressing thin. If this is real, boys build his house on sand. But sand buries slow. What do you want from me? I lean forward, my hand resting on the weight of the pen. Just this, Rosemary. When the time comes, keep your eyes open. Her cane taps once against the floor, a metronome of judgment. She doesn't agree. She doesn't refuse. She only says, we'll see. And I realize as I step back into the night that her doubt may be the crack that topples my son or the silence that kills me. The river wind cut sharp as I left Rosemary's stoop, her words echoing like the tap of her cane. We'll see. It wasn't a promise, just a hinge, swinging either way when the weight came down. That's the danger of people like her. They don't bend until they know which side will hold. I drove back through the city, neon skimming the windshield, thinking of Summer's letters folded tight in the safe. She would have said the same thing in softer words. Trust no one who hasn't bled for you. Rosemary had bled once in the oil crisis, but wound scab over. Memory calcifies. Money rewrites loyalties. At home, the house smelled of old wood and faint lavender, a ghost of her perfume. I poured a single shot of rye and sat in the kitchen, letting the silence thicken. Warren would want progress by morning. Patrick would be rehearsing in front of mirrors, and the board, Kirk and Sage especially, would be sharpening their knives, picturing quarterly bonuses carved from flesh. I needed more than ink. I needed a voice A voice that could not be cross-examined. A voice that couldn't be dismissed as grief's hallucination. So I went hunting. The next day, the exchange buzzed like a hive, oblivious to its own rot. In a side corridor, I found a man I hadn't seen in years. Anthony, a clerk with ears like satellite dishes and the memory of a tape recorder. He'd worked the archives back when Patrick was still polishing shoes on my porch. "Devin," he said, eyes narrowing, "thought you retired." "Not yet." I leaned close. "You remember who signed for those Kirk Sage deals last spring?" He hesitated. Then his shoulders slumped. "Your boy." I didn't want to believe it, but he came down here himself. Had the papers ready. Told me to file them under your name. Said you'd already approved. "You signed witness?" He nodded once. Shame in the motion. I placed my phone on the table between us. "Hit record." He swallowed, then repeated every word. His voice trembled, but the truth stood upright. When it was done, I closed the file. "Thank you," I said. He rubbed his hands. "You know what happens if he finds out I talked." "You won't need to worry," I told him. "I'll carry it." That night I sent the file to Warren, encrypted and tagged. His reply came 5 minutes later. "This changes everything." But I knew better. It changes nothing until the room hears it. Until the walls hum with the sound of my son's lies breaking open like rotten fruit. The board meeting was set for Friday in the underground council hall of the exchange, a place as cold as a morgue, where history pressed down through every pipe and rivet. I hadn't been there in years, but I remembered the gong on the far wall, a bronze disc that rang once for mergers and twice for deaths of companies. The sound haunted me, metallic, final. Friday came. The hall smelled of iron and dust, like a church built for money instead of God. Council members filed in Kirk, Sage, Rosemary, a half-dozen others, their shoes whispering on stone. Patrick stood at the head, smile carved in marble. He greeted them like a host at a wake. I sat opposite, calm, the pen heavy in my jacket. Warren slid in beside me, eyes bright with the secret we carried. Patrick began. His voice was smooth, practiced. "Gentlemen and lady, our company stands at a precipice. My father, for all his contributions, is unfit to lead us further." He paused, letting the word unfit echo. "We must act decisively." He produced a petition, spread it across the table like a banner. Murmurs stirred. Kirk nodded. Sage smirked. I watched, waited, let him think the room was his. Then Patrick turned to me, voice dipped in mock respect. "Father, if you wish to speak, though I must warn you, the evidence is substantial." I rose. My chair scrape rang sharp against the stone. Every I followed. I placed the phone on the table, pressed play. Anthony's voice filled the hall, trembling but true. Patrick Rowland instructed me to file these under his father's name. He said the old man had already signed. It was a lie. I saw him forge the signature. The room froze. Kirk's smirk curdled. Sage shifted in his seat. Rosemary's cane tapped once. Slow, deliberate. Patrick laughed. Too loud, too quick. "Fabrication," he said. A bitter clerk grasping for relevance. "This means nothing." I looked him in the eye and slowly drew the ledger copy from my case, lay it beside the phone. His handwriting, my sun-thin greed scratching across pages. "Then let the council decide," I said. The hall was silent. The fluorescent lights hummed like a hive on fire. Patrick's smile trembled at the edges. He opened his mouth to retort. And that was when the gong sounded once, loud as thunder, though no one had struck it. The bronze gong's roar shivered through the stone ribs of the hall, rattling glass, vibrating in marrow. For a second no one breathed. I could see it in their faces. Council members glancing around, half expecting some ceremony to begin. But the mallet hung untouched on its stand. The sound had come from nowhere or everywhere, like the building itself passing judgment. Patrick broke the silence first. He laughed, brittle and strained. "Well, looks like the ghosts of the exchange are restless." He straightened his tie. "Let's focus on facts, not superstition." But the room had shifted. Rosemary's eyes narrowed, her knuckles white on the cane. Kirk coughed, uncomfortable. Even Sage leaned back as if the sound had cracked something invisible. I didn't flinch. I let the echo settle, let it haunt them. Then I leaned forward. Facts, then. The voice of your witness. The hand in these ledgers. Both yours, Patrick. Truth rings louder than you think. His lips pressed in. You doctored this. Paid a clerk to... Enough! Rosemary cut in. Her voice, though aged, sliced sharp as glass. I've known Devin Rowland since before you could spell profit, boy. That clerk has no reason to lie. These ledgers, they breathe old air. Hard to fake dust. Patrick turned toward her, eyes pleading. Rosemary, you know I have vision. You of all people understand what must be sacrificed to move forward. Vision, she said, doesn't mean blinding the room while you pick its pocket. A low murmur rose. The council was fracturing, tension hanging like static before lightning. Warren gave me a side glance, a slight nod. Now was the time. I tapped the phone again. Another file played. Anthony's voice continued, more damning this time. Patrick promised Kirk and Sage extraordinary returns through layoffs and asset stripping. He said the old man would be gone soon, and the board would thank him for their gains. Gasps. Eyes swung to Kirk and Sage, who both bristled like caught dogs. Kirk slammed a palm on the table. This is slander. Is it? I asked softly. Or is it just a truth you hope would never leave the basement? The fluorescent thickened, buzzing like flies over meat. My pulse slowed, steady as a pendulum. Years of boardrooms, betrayals, and buyouts had taught me one rule. If you want win, make them look at themselves in the mirror, not at you. Patrick felt the ground slipping. He rose, pacing like a caged animal, voice rising. You're all blind. My father is finished senile, clinging to ghosts. Do you want a man ruled by grief's signier future? He keeps my mother's study like a shrine. He talks to her letters like they're alive. The words cracked through the chamber, sharp and cruel. For the first time, shame flickered across a few faces. But not toward me, toward him. He thought he was painting me as weak. Instead, he showed them a son willing to desecrate his mother's memory in public. I stood slow, deliberate. Summer was the compass of this company. She believed honor fed profit better than hunger ever could. If loving her disqualifies me, then so be it. But it doesn't disqualify me from seeing your fraud, Patrick, nor from ending it. Silence again, heavy, aching. Then Rosemary tapped her cane twice, judgment rendered. The council will deliberate. Patrick's face hardened, mask cracking at the edges. He looked around, saw sympathy bleeding from his allies, saw respect drifting toward me like iron filings to a magnet. The chair of the council, a man whose name has been forgotten by every paper, but whose gavel still decides futures, cleared his throat. We'll reconvene in 1 hour. Alone. Chair scraped back. The members filed out, whispering. Only Warren stayed with me. Patrick lingered near the door, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. As he passed me, he leaned close, his breath hot, words barely more than a hiss. This isn't over. You don't know the half of what I've set in motion. I looked him dead in the eye, voice calm. Then pray I never find out the other half. He stormed out, footsteps echoing down the stone corridor. Warren exhaled, rubbing his temples. You might have just turned them, but he's desperate now. And a desperate man can burn more than paper. I nodded, fingers brushing the gold pen in my pocket. Summer's voice whispered from memory. Hold the line, Devin. Not for pride. For the people on the line with you. The hourglass was turning. And when the council returned one way or another, the sand would bury my son or me. The council's hour felt like a year. Warren and I stayed in the chamber, the walls exhaling a stale cold, the gong looming at the far end like an executioner biding his turn. My phone lay on the table, dark now, but hot in my pocket memory, with Anthony's voice. I didn't sit. I walked the perimeter, hand brushing the stone, listening to the ductwork thrum above. Somewhere in that metal heartbeat, I heard Summer's voice again. Don't let him feed on you. At last the doors opened. The council filed back in, expressions unreadable, lips pressed into straight lines. Rosemary's cane tapped once, echoing like a countdown. The chair cleared his throat. We've considered the evidence. The petition lacks merit. Devin remains competent. A relief too sharp to savor washed through me, but I didn't exhale because the chair wasn't finished. However, the council remains divided on succession. Patrick argues stability, requires change. Devin argues integrity, demands continuity. We must decide. Eyes turned. I stood still, hands folded behind my back, refusing to blink first. Patrick seized the silence. He strode to the table, spreading his arms like a preacher. Do you see? My father still clings to sentiment, to dead letters and dusty ledgers. He can't lead where we're going. You want returns? You want survival? Follow me. His voice swelled with manic conviction, bouncing against a stone until it almost sounded convincing. Almost. Then I spoke, low and steady. You've heard his promises. You've seen the ink he forged. Ask yourselves this. If a man betrays his father, what oath will he keep to you? The chamber quivered with the question. Even Kirk and Sage, who'd sworn themselves to his prophets, avoided his eyes. Rosemary leaned forward, her voice dry but cutting. Patrick, you've mistaken greed for vision. This company was built to outlast storms, not to gamble them into hurricanes. Patrick's mask cracked. His hand slammed the table. Enough of this sanctimony. You think he's some paragon? He hides behind my mother's memory like a shield, while The words faltered. Rage had carried him too far. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the chair said, We will vote. 7 hands would decide. My fate, his, the company's. Ballots were passed, marked, folded. The silence was heavier than gunmetal. One by one, they dropped them into the box. The chair drew them out, calling results with clip precision. For Devin, for Patrick, for Devin, for Devin. Patrick's face drained. His fists clenched, then opened again as though to grab air. When the final vote fell, 6-1, the gavel came down with a crack that rattled the glass. Devin remained CO. Applause never came. Just silence, thick with judgment. Patrick stood frozen, smile carved but hollow, eyes blazing. Then, as the room began to stir, he did something none of us expected. He laughed. A sound unmoored, wild, bouncing around the chamber like broken glass. You think this matters? He shouted. Ink and votes, dust and ghosts? You don't see what's already in motion. Council members shifted, unsettled. Warren grabbed my arm, whispering, He's unraveling. Careful. I didn't move. I watched my son unravel with the grace of a stage actor who's forgotten his lines. His laugh thinned, broke, and what followed was worse. A whisper to himself, raw and cracked. She would have chosen me. Summer, always the wound beneath the armor. He looked up at me then, eyes wet with something darker than grief, brighter than rage. You'll regret this, Dad. You'll regret standing against me. The chamber door slammed behind him as he stormed out, and in the silence he left, the gong seemed to hum again, low and ominous, as though promising it hadn't rung its last. The echo of the slammed door still quivered through the hall when the council began dispersing. No applause, no handshakes, only the uneasy shuffle of men and women who'd just seen a legacy crack down the middle. Rosemary lingered, leaning on her cane, her eyes cutting through the silence. You won the vote, she said, but you haven't won your son. I didn't come here to win him, I answered. I came to save the company. Her gaze sharpened. Then you'd better be ready for what he does next. Desperation builds faster than profit. She turned, the tap of her cane fading into the corridor. Warren sighed beside me, loosening his tie. She's right. Patrick's cornered, and a cornered man doesn't think. He burns. I touched the gold pen in my pocket, grounding myself. Let him burn. I'll be the one holding the hose. But even as I said it, I felt Summer's words tighten around me. If he turns a hunger on you, don't let him feed. The following days proved Warren right. Rumors spread to the markets like oil spills, rolling systems facing instability, insiders questioning leadership, whispers of a split at the top. Patrick's handprints were all over it. He fed the press, fed the brokers, fed anyone hungry for scandal. I kept my calm. I visited the floors, spoke with engineers, managers, secretaries, looked them in the eyes, reminded them who we were, not a company of speculation, but of grit. The loyalty I saw there steadied me. Patrick could spin headlines, but he couldn't unmake history. Still, I knew he'd try again, louder, crueler. And I didn't have to wait long. 3 nights later, I received a message from Rosemary herself. Council summoned. Emergency session. Patrick's request. The words tasted like iron. He wasn't done. He wanted the stage again, this time with more theater. The hall of the exchange was colder than before, the pipes rattling overhead as a warning of collapse. Council members sat uneasy, whispering. The gong gleamed in the dim light, waiting. Then Patrick arrived. Not alone, flanked by Kirk and Sage, both smug as men with stakes in chaos. He wore confidence like armor, smile bright, suit sharper than his words. He didn't wait for ceremony. He went straight to the center, raised his hand for silence. "Esteemed council," he began, "my father claims victory, but you deserve the truth, the whole truth. Tonight, I'll give it to you." He reached into his case, withdrew a folder thick with papers. He scattered them across the table like a magician, revealing cards. "Here," he said, "are records of my father's instability. Signed accounts of erratic behavior, negligence, decisions clouded by grief. Witnesses who will testify he's unfit." Gasps rippled. Council members leaned forward, eyes widening at the sight of signatures and stamps. Warren's jaw clenched beside me. Patrick smirked. "You thought my petition was flimsy? This is the foundation. This is the proof." I didn't move. I didn't blink. Instead, I studied the documents, their too perfect symmetry, the neatness of signatures, the convenient timing. My chest tightened not with fear, but with recognition, for I knew those strokes. That thin, greedy hand. He had forged again, not in ledgers this time, but in affidavits dressed as truth. I lifted my eyes to his. He thought he'd trapped me, thought the room would drown in his lies. But all I saw was a boy doubling down on a crooked game. And as the council bent over the papers, whispering louder, I placed my hand on the table, steady as stone, and said, "Gentlemen, lady, shall we listen to those voices ourselves?" Patrick froze. His mask twitched. He hadn't expected me to carry the real voices in my pocket. Warren leaned close, whispering, "Play it now." But I didn't. Not yet. Timing is the sharpest blade. Instead, I stood, slow and deliberate, letting the silence thicken. "I will speak," I said. The chamber hushed. Even the pipes above seemed to fall quiet. I looked at Patrick, my son, my betrayer, and I promised him, silently, that this next cut would not just draw blood. It would strip him bare. And then, before I could open my mouth, the heavy doors groaned again. Another figure entered the hall, unexpected, uninvited. And with one look, I knew the tide of the war was about to change. The doors moaned wide, and every head turned. Rosemary's cane struck first against the stone floor, sharp as a pistol crack. But she wasn't alone. At her side shuffled Anthony, the clerk from the archives, shoulders hunched, eyes darting at the council like a man stepping into a storm without an umbrella. Patrick's smile faltered, but only for a heartbeat. Then he masked it, clapping his hands once. "Ah, witnesses," he said smoothly. "Even better. Please, Anthony, tell them what you told my father, how he pressured you to invent lies against me." Anthony swallowed, trembling. He looked at me, then at Warren, then back at the council. Rosemary's hand rested on his arm, steadying him. Her eyes were fierce, unblinking. "Speak," she ordered. The hall went silent, the hum of the ducks sounding like a drum roll. Anthony cleared his throat. His voice cracked but carried. Devin never pressured me. Patrick came to me himself. He forged documents, told me to file them under his father's name. He promised me promotion if I stayed quiet. And when I hesitated, he reminded me who signs paychecks. The words hit like gunshots. Papers fluttered as council members shifted, stunned. Kirk cursed under his breath. Sage sank lower in his chair. Patrick barked a laugh, too sharp, too desperate. "This is pathetic. A bitter clerk, dredged up by my father to smear me. You think anyone believes this farce? Rosemary slammed her cane on the floor. The sound cracked like a verdict. I believe it. The air thickened. For a long moment, no one else spoke. Then Warren leaned forward, voice measured. The pattern is clear. Forged contracts. Fabricated affidavits. Witness intimidation. If this were a courtroom, Patrick, you'd already be finished. Patrick's face twisted, the calm peeling away. He snatched one of the forged affidavits from the table, waving it like a banner. These are real. My father's a liar, too senile to tell day from night. He hid behind Mom's ghost. Stop. My voice cut through, low but thunderous. Don't you dare speak her name to shield your greed. The words hung heavy. Even the pipes seemed to hush. For the first time, Patrick looked small. A boy cornered, mask slipping, rage boiling. He crumpled the paper in his fist, eyes flashing like broken glass. You think you've won, old man? This company is mine. It's in my blood. I rose slowly, the gold pen gleaming in my pocket. Blood builds nothing. Integrity does. That's why you'll never hold it. Gasps echoed as Rosemary's voice carried again. Enough. The council would decide now. But before the chair could call the vote, Patrick did something none of us expected. He lunged forward, grabbed a stack of forged affidavits, and hurled them across the chamber. Pages scattered like startled birds, fluttering to the stale air, landing at the feet of the council. You want truth, he shouted. There is no truth, only power. The council recoiled, some in fear, some in disgust. Warren whispered in my ear. He just buried himself. But I wasn't so sure. Desperation makes men dangerous. And as Patrick's wild eyes scanned the room, I realized he wasn't finished. Because the way his hand brushed his pocket, the way his smile returned, crooked and thin, I knew he had one more card to play. And the next move would not be about paper. Patrick's hand lingered in his pocket, like it held a trigger. The chamber stiffened, a single breath shared by everyone. His grin stretched too wide, too thin. You think the war ends in here? He said, voice carrying, sharp as glass. You think votes and dusty books can stop what's already moving? He pulled out his phone, raised it like a trophy. Every headline, every whisper, every leak you've seen this week. I fed them myself. The street already believes he's finished. He pointed at me, his voice booming. By the time you all shuffle home tonight, Devin Rowland will be the relic the markets already priced him as. Murmurs rippled through the council. Kirk leaned forward, pale now, as if realizing he backed the wrong horse in a fixed race. Sage muttered, God help us. I didn't flinch. I'd spent decades watching storms roll in, learning when to bend and when to stand. Patrick wanted me rattled. Instead, I stepped closer, slow, measured. Headlines fade, I said quietly, but character stays. And every man in this room just watched yours unravel. His jaw flexed. Don't preach, old man. You think these fossils care about character? They care about dividends. Maybe, I said, but when those dividends come to cost of trust, the market eats its own. For a moment, the chamber was only the hum of the lights and the cold metal breath of the ducks. Then Rosemary spoke, voice brittle but firm. Patrick, I've watched empires fall for less arrogance than you've shown tonight. You may have poisoned the headlines, but you've lost this room. Patrick's hand shook as he held up his phone. Then I'll take it to the world outside. He swiped the screen, prepared to send whatever poison he'd prepared. I reached into my jacket. The gold pen pressed into my palm like a reminder. I placed it on the table, gleaming under the yellow light. Before you send that, son, remember who gave you the first pen you ever signed with. Remember what I told you. That ink writes memory. And memory doesn't forgive. His eyes flickered. Just for an instant, I saw the boy he'd been, holding Summer's hand at the kitchen table, scribbling his name for the first time in blue ink, grinning up at me like it meant the world. Then the flicker vanished, replaced by fury. Spare me, he spat. Your lectures die with you. He hit send. The chamber lit with gasps. Phones buzzed, screens flashing. The poison was loose now. Statements, accusations, the affidavits he'd forged, leaked to reporters in real time. Warren's face blanched. "He just set the building on fire," he whispered. Patrick raised his chin, triumphant. "By morning, the world will see him as unfit. And you'll all follow me because you'll have no choice." But I didn't look at him. I looked at Rosemary. Her face was stone, unreadable, until she nodded once. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out something small, silver, old-fashioned, a recorder. She pressed play. Anthony's testimony spilled again into the air, undeniable, unedited, now carried by someone the council trusted beyond question. The council erupted, voices clashing, anger boiling. Patrick's phone buzzed again and again, but now every vibration sounded like a verdict against him. And then, as if the exchange itself demanded order, the bronze gong thundered again, twice this time, deep and final. Every voice stilled. Patrick's smile shattered, because 2 strikes meant only one thing in this chamber: the death of company, or of a legacy, and we were about to find out which. 2 strikes. The sound shook the marrow of the hall, rolling under the council table like thunder trapped in iron. Men who'd stared down recessions flinched. Even Rosemary gripped her cane tighter. No hand had touched the mallet. The gong had chosen for itself. Patrick froze, phone slack in his hand, confidence draining like water from a cracked glass. His eyes darted from the bronze disc to the council, searching for an anchor. None came. The chair of the council spoke first, voice low but carrying. 2 strikes. In this chamber, that mark has always meant an ending. He paused, eyes shifting from me to Patrick. "The question is, whose?" Silence stretched. I could hear the hum of the ducks like a warning drum, the faint shuffle of paper where Patrick's forged affidavits still littered the floor. Warren leaned toward me, whispering, "Now's your moment. Take it clean." I didn't speak yet. I let the weight of the gong settle. Then I stood, drawing myself tall, the years falling from my shoulders like dust shaken from an old coat. "This company was born in firestorms," I said. "My father built it with steel hands. I carried it through 5 recessions, 3 betrayals, and the grave of the woman I loved. But this—" I pointed at Patrick, my voice steady as stone. "This is the first time the enemy wore my own name." Gasps, whispers. Patrick's face twisted, rage and shame colliding. He tried to speak, but I raised a hand. "I taught my son that truth outlasts every storm." He chose lies. "I taught him loyalty feeds a company better than hunger." He chose betrayal. And now you see what those choices yield. I picked up the gold pen from the table. The metal caught the chamber's dull light, gleaming like a blade. This pen signed every covenant that gave our people safety, dignity, continuity. It never wrote deceit. And tonight, it will write the record of what ends here. Rosemary's cane tapped once, agreement. Kirk and Sage shifted, visibly sweating. Their gamble on Patrick was turning the dust under their palms. Patrick snapped, his voice cracking. "You talk like a prophet, but you're just an old man hiding behind relics. I built those deals. I secured those promises. You think anyone cares about dusty morals when profits are on the line? Watch closely," I told him, "because they care now." The chair lifted his gavel. Council must vote on whether Patrick Rowland remains in succession or is barred from executive office permanently. Patrick's eyes went wild. "Barred? You can't bar me. I am this company's future." He looked around desperately, searching for allies, but the room avoided his gaze. Even Kirk and Sage, cornered by Anthony's testimony, couldn't save him. Votes were cast, swift and merciless. When the count returned, it was unanimous. "Patrick Rowland," the chair said, voice final, "you are barred from succession, effective immediately." The gong didn't sound this time. It didn't need to. The silence was its echo. Patrick staggered. Disbelief etched into every line of his face. His lips parted, but no words came. Finally, he whispered, hoarse, "She would have chosen me." Summers' ghost again. Always the wound he couldn't cauterize. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "She chose truth. That's why she chose me." He flinched as though struck. For the first time, I saw not an heir, not an adversary, but a man stripped bare by his own hunger. His shoulders sagged, eyes glassy. Then he straightened suddenly, fire flashing back. This isn't over. You think a council vote can bury me? You'll see. You'll all see. He stormed toward the door, scattering the forged papers under his shoes like fallen leaves. The iron hinges groaned as he wrenched the chamber open, but before he disappeared into the corridor, he turned back, face twisted in a promise of vengeance. And I knew, though the council had ended his bid, my son was not done. He was planning something louder, crueler, something meant to humiliate me before the world. The war had left the chamber, but it was far from finished. The chamber emptied like a tide pulling back, leaving only Warren, Rosemary, and me amid the scattered papers. The silence was heavy, filled with the metallic taste of unfinished war. Warren rubbed his forehead, muttering, "He won't take this quietly." "No," I said, "he'll strike where it hurts, and he'll do it in public." Rosemary leaned on her cane, eyes narrowing. "Humiliation. It's the only weapon he has left. He'll want to drag you through mud, so thick the council's decision feels like an afterthought." She was right. Patrick wouldn't settle for a closed room defeat. He needed spectacle, and he'd find it. That night, the prediction came true. The following morning's papers carried my face across the front page. Headlines screaming Roland legacy in turmoil. Quotes pulled from Patrick's leaks painted me as a grieving tyrant, a relic clinging to power. Even talk shows circled, pundits dissecting my mental decline. He'd turned the world outside the council into his jury. By midday, the board demanded a press conference. "Transparency," Warren explained grimly. "They want you in front of cameras, proving you're not the man he's made you out to be." I agreed. I wasn't afraid of the lens. But I knew Patrick. He'd show up, and he'd turn that stage into his battlefield. The press hall was packed, rows of flashing bulbs, microphones angled like rifles. I stepped to the podium, the gold pen in my jacket a quiet weight. Warren stood off to the side, Rosemary behind him, watching with hawk's patience. I spoke first, steady, deliberate. Roland Systems is not a company of shadows. We build our name on resilience, on trust, on people. I remain committed to leading with that same integrity. Applause came measured, cautious. Reporters shouted questions. I answered each calm, careful. For a moment, it seemed we'd stemmed the tide. Then the doors opened. Patrick walked in as though he owned the room. Suit perfect, smile rehearsed. The cameras swung instantly, bulbs exploding. He didn't approach the council table. He walked straight toward me. "Father," he said loudly, his voice carrying across the hall. "You talk of trust, yet you hide truths even from yourself." He turned to the cameras. "This man, my father, is unfit. I came here tonight not as a rival, but as a son begging you all to see what I've seen." Gasps, whispers. Flashbulbs strobed. I met his gaze without blinking. "Patrick, this is not the place." "This is exactly the place," he snapped. "You stand before the world, pretending strength. But you're weak, broken, obsessed with letters from a ghost." The reporters erupted, shouting, scribbling. He had thrown Summer's memory into the pit, banking on spectacle to wound me. I let the noise roar for a beat. Then I spoke, calm as stone. "Yes, I kept her letters. They reminded me why we build, not for greed, not for glory, but for people we love. If that's weakness, then I'll carry it proudly." The hall hushed. For a second, he looked uncertain, eyes flickering with the weight of his own cruelty. But pride overruled. He raised a hand, summoning the cameras. "See? Sentiment has blinded him. This company deserves better. It deserves me." I leaned toward the microphone, lowering my voice so every reporter had to lean closer to catch it. "What it deserves is truth." And then I reached into my jacket, not for the pen, for the recorder, Anthony's testimony, Rosemary's confirmation, the weight of every lie he had spun, ready to echo across the airwaves. Patrick's face drained, his smile breaking. "Don't you?" But it was too late. The hall filled with Anthony's trembling voice, broadcast into every lens. Patrick Rowland forged contracts. He lied. He promised blood for profit. Gasps, shouts, flashes, chaos erupting. The world had just heard his corruption, live, and for the first time, my son stood in public, stripped of his mask. But in his eyes, I saw something dangerous ignite. Not surrender, but rage. He wasn't done. He would find another stage, and he would make sure the next blow cut deeper. The press hall boiled like a hive struck with a stick. Reporters surged forward, microphones thrust, bulbs bursting white. Patrick stood frozen in their glare, his mask collapsing in real time. Anthony's voice still echoed from the speakers, every syllable a nail sealing his coffin. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the questions flew. Patrick, did you forge those documents? Mr. Rowland, what do you say to your son's testimony? Is this the end of your succession bid? He tried to laugh, but it came out jagged, unconvincing. You don't understand. This is manipulation. My father planted this, paid off a desperate clerk. But the crowd wasn't buying. They'd heard the tremor in Anthony's voice, the unpolished truth of a man who'd risked everything to speak. Reporters smelled blood, and they weren't circling me anymore. They were circling him. I stepped back from the podium, letting the spotlight stay where it belonged. Warren whispered at my side, he's finished. I wasn't so sure. A man like Patrick doesn't end when cornered. He mutates. The cameras rolled on as he shouted over the noise, face red, sweat glistening. This company will fall with him. Mark my words, Roland Systems is deadweight, and the market will eat it alive. Gasps rippled. But this time they weren't aimed at me. They recoiled from him. A son tearing down his father was one thing. A man tearing down his own company in public was suicide. Rosemary's cane struck the floor behind us. Even in the chaos, the sound carried. Enough, she said, her voice cold steel. You've shown them who you are. Patrick's eyes darted, wild. Then, suddenly, he bolted. Cameras were to follow him. Reporters shouting as he stormed through the doors, vanishing into the night like a man fleeing a crime scene. The press conference ended in a storm, Warren pulling me away before the crowd devoured us whole. Outside, the evening air tasted of rain and electricity. I stood under the awning, heart steady, the gold pen pressing against my ribs. He's wounded, Warren said. This should be the end. But Rosemary, who had followed us into the damp night, shook her head. Wounded predators lash hardest before they fall. Watch him. He's not done humiliating himself. Or you. She was right. By dawn, the networks were running Patrick's meltdown in a loop. Headlines screamed Roland Air unhinged. Stock wavered, then steadied as analysts spun the company's resilience. Public sympathy, to my surprise, drifted toward me. The old man who stood calm against betrayal. But victory never tastes sweet when it's your son on the scaffold. 2 days later came the invitation. Not from the council, not from the press, from Patrick himself. A public shareholders forum in the grand atrium of the exchange, open to investors, cameras, and the world. He wanted one last theater, one last chance to claw back dignity by destroying mine. Warren slammed the paper onto my desk. It's a trap. He'll grandstand, try to bait you, turn spectacle into sympathy. Decline it. But I studied the invitation, the embossed letters, the pomp of it. Patrick had chosen the stage carefully. The atrium with its marble arches, its colossal gong suspended high above like judgment waiting to fall. Summer's words whispered through memory. If he turns hunger into fire, don't let it consume you. Meet it, shape it, turn it. I set the paper down, took up the gold pen, and signed my acceptance. Warren cursed under his breath. Rosemary only smiled, thin and knowing. Then it seems we're headed for the final act. The atrium loomed in my mind already, stone light, echoes, the weight of history pressing down. Patrick would bring fire. I would bring truth. And only one of us would walk out unburned. The atrium of the exchange had never felt more like cathedral. Marble arches stretched upward into shadow, banners of companies long dead, hanging like relics of forgotten saints. The colossal gong loomed above the floor, suspended in its cradle of iron chains, bronze darkened by a century of verdicts. Beneath it, rows of chairs had been set, filled with shareholders, reporters, and opportunists sniffing for blood. Patrick had chosen the theater well. He always did. I arrived early, Warren at my side, Rosemary settling in behind us with her cane like a scepter. The air buzzed with low murmurs, camera crews testing lights, traders whispering odds as if this were a prize fight. When Patrick entered, he didn't just walk, he arrived. Tailored suit cut sharp enough to slice. Smile dazzling under the spotlights. Every gesture rehearsed for maximum command. The crowd stirred. He raised a hand for silence, and even before speaking, he owned their attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice smooth as oil, "today is about truth, about who will carry Roland Systems forward, and who will drag it backward." He turned, gesturing toward me. "My father is a man of history, a man of grief, but he is no longer a man of the future." Gasps fluttered. Cameras zoomed. His eyes glittered. He was good. I knew that. He always had been. I let him talk. He painted pictures of instability, recited cherry-picked decisions, even twisted Summer's memory again, holding it up like a weapon. He spoke of new markets and necessary sacrifices, promising the shareholders fortunes if they cut me loose. Applause rose from corners of the crowd. He basked in it, smiling as though the war had already been won. Then my turn came. I rose slowly, letting the room quiet. The gold pen in my hand caught the light. "I built Roland Systems with two truths," I said, voice steady, carrying. "That profit without people is theft, and that legacy without honor is ash. My son believes otherwise. You've heard it yourself." Murmurs rippled. Patrick smirked. "Legacy doesn't pay dividends, father." I stepped closer to the microphone, leaning in. "And lies don't keep companies alive." I pulled out the recorder. Anthony's testimony played again, his trembling voice filling the atrium. Gasps, whispers, shouts. I laid the forged affidavits beside the mic, their neat signatures catching the camera's hungry eyes. The crowd shifted. The tide was turning. Patrick saw it. Panic flickered, then hardened into fury. He strode forward, voice rising. "Do you see what he does? Dragging private grief into public spectacle, waving forged accusations as truth. This is a charade." He snatched one of the papers from the table, holding it aloft. These are nothing. My father clings to ghosts, and you cheer him while he poisons a company's name." His voice cracked, too sharp, too desperate. The crowd recoiled to venom, some shaking their heads. Then Rosemary rose, leaning on her cane, her voice carrying like scripture. "Patrick Roland, you have mistaken spectacle for vision. We have seen your greed. We have heard your lies. And in this house of memory, truth will not be mocked." The atrium roared with reaction, some applause, some outrage. The cameras drank every angle, every shadow. Patrick, flushed, chest heaving, pointed at me, his voice breaking. "You think you've beaten me? You think the world will follow you over me? Watch. Watch what happens when I take everything you built and burn it in front of you." The words were too much, too raw. The crowd recoiled, the spectacle collapsing into a confession of madness. Warren's hand touched my shoulder. "He's finished. One more push." I gripped the gold pen, raised it high enough for the lights to catch. "This pen has signed every covenant that kept this company alive." I said, "It will sign the future too. Not with arrogance, not with betrayal, with honor." The crowd stirred, energy shifting. Patrick's smile cracked completely. He saw it slipping, all of it. And then in the silence that followed, the chains above us groaned. The gong, vast and ancient, swayed slightly on its rig, as though history itself leaned closer to witness the fall. Every head turned upward. Patrick's eyes widened, and I knew the moment of reckoning was about to strike. The groan of the chains rolled to the atrium like thunder in a cathedral. Heads tilted upward as the colossal gong swayed, bronze catching the spotlights in a dull shimmer. Reporters gasped. Shareholders murmured. For a moment, even Patrick fell silent, staring at the ancient weight above us. Then he seized it. "See!" he shouted, throwing his arms wide. "Even the exchange itself knows the time has come. My father's reign is ending. Theatrical, desperate. Yet some in the crowd leaned forward, hungry for spectacle. Patrick fed them, striding beneath the suspended gong, eyes blazing. This hall will remember me as the man who ended the ghost of Roland Systems and brought it into the light of the future. I stepped forward, voice steady. Careful, Patrick. History doesn't favor the loudest voice. It favors the truest. He sneered. Truest? You paraded forged lies, broken letters. The senility of an old man clinging to his dead wife. That's your truth. The crowd recoiled at his venom. Rosemary's cane-struck marble, sharp as judgment. Mind your tongue, boy. The dead deserve respect. Patrick ignored her. He climbed the dais beneath the gong, high enough that his figure loomed in the harsh light. Look at him, he cried, pointing at me. A relic holding a pen like it means something. Do you want your future written by ink, or forged in steel and profit? He paused for effect, waiting for cheers. None came. Only the uneasy rustle of a crowd realizing the mask had slipped. I lifted the gold pen, letting it gleam. This pen signed every promise we kept. I said, my voice cutting clean to the murmurs. Not one of those signatures was a lie. Can you say the same? Patrick's jaw tightened. His silence was louder than any denial. Cameras flashed, immortalizing the moment. The father with the pen, the son under the gong. History being etched not in ink but in witness. And then Patrick snapped. He pounded his fist against the gong's base, the sound reverberating like a cannon shot. The bronze shuddered, chains rattling overhead. Gasps rang out as the massive disc swayed harder, moaning on its rig. Do you hear it? Patrick roared, voice cracking. That's the death knell of his empire. Panic rippled through the atrium. Reporters scrambled back. Council members rose, shouting for order. Warren grabbed my arm. We need to stop this before he brings the ceiling down. But I stood firm, eyes locked on my son. Patrick. My voice cut through the chaos. Step away. Don't make the final image of your legacy a tantrum under a falling bell. He froze, chest heaving, sweat gleaming under the lights. For a moment, I saw the boy he had been, frightened, desperate for approval. Then the fury surged back. Legacy, he spat. I'll write my own. He struck the gong again. The chain screamed. The bronze disc tilted, swaying dangerously over the crowd. Screams erupted. Security rushed forward, but Patrick threw up his arms, bellowing, This company dies with him. And that was when I moved. I climbed the dais, slow but unyielding, my footsteps echoing like drum beats. The crowd fell into stunned silence, watching father and son face each other under the trembling weight of history. Patrick's eyes met mine, wild and glassy. Stay down, old man, he hissed, or I'll bury us both. I reached into my jacket. The pen lay cold and certain in my hand. I raised it, not as a weapon, but as a seal. This ends tonight, I said. The chains above gave one final groan, the gong shuddering as if ready to fall. And with the world watching, Patrick's hand shot out, straight for me. Patrick's hand lunged for me. Fingers curled like claws, desperation burning hotter than reason. The crowd gasped as the gong above groaned again, its chains shrieking in protest. For an instant, it felt as if the whole atrium, the marble, the banners, the faces, held its breath. I didn't flinch. I caught his wrist mid-swing. Grip iron, years of boardroom battles, and buried grief anchoring me steady. Our eyes locked, his wild with fury, mine calm as stone. Patrick, I said, voice low but carrying, this is the last time you reach for me with a lie in your hand. He snarled, twisting, trying to break free. The dais trembled beneath us. Cameras flashed, searing the moment into eternity. The crowd shouted warnings as the massive bronze disc swayed dangerously above. And then, silence, except for the creak of iron. I lifted the gold pen between us. Its weight was more than metal. It was memory, Summer's hand guiding mine. The first contract signed in hope, the promises etched in ink that outlived betrayals. I pressed it against his fist, forcing him to see it. This pen built everything you're trying to burn, I said. Not power, not greed, Truth. For a heartbeat, he faltered, his grip slackened. In his eyes flickered the boy he once was, scribbling his name in blue ink, grinning at his mother. Then rage smothered it. He shoved me back, stumbling into the gong's frame. The bronze roared as it swung wide, chains rattling like thunder. Gasps tore through the atrium. The disc lurched, then slammed back, the strike booming through stone like judgment itself. Patrick crumpled beneath the echo, hands clutching his ears, his body trembling under the weight of sound too vast to fight. Cameras caught it all. The once heir brought to his knees, humiliated not by my hand, but by the voice of history. I stepped forward, steady, and placed the pen against a ledger waiting on the counsel's table. My signature flowed smooth and final. The act was simple, but the symbol was absolute. Continuity sealed in gold, not rage. Rosemary rose, cane striking marble. "It is done," she declared. The counsel nodded, murmurs swelling into thunderous agreement. Patrick staggered his feet, face pale, sweat shining. His eyes darted across the crowd. Shareholders turning away, reporters scribbling his downfall, allies already abandoning him. He opened his mouth to roar again, but no words came. Only silence, and in that silence, the gong's echo faded into memory. I looked at him one last time. You wanted the world to see me broken. Instead, they saw you, and they won't forget. His shoulders sagged, the fight bleeding out. The security men moved in, but he brushed them aside, stumbling toward the exit. No applause followed, no sympathy. Only the hollow sound of his footsteps fading into the marble hall. The atrium exhaled. Light streamed through high windows, catching the dust and turning it gold. I stood beneath it, the pen still warm in my hand, and felt summer beside me, not as a ghost, but as a compass fulfilled. The company was safe, my honor intact, my son undone by his own hunger. The final image burned itself into the crowd's eyes. Patrick walking out alone, head bowed, while I stood steady with the gold pen raised, not as a relic, but as the man who had held the line. And somewhere deep in exchange, the old gong, silent now, gleamed like it had witnessed justice. The war was over, and I had won, not by destroying my son, but by refusing to let him destroy me. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.